Hello, we are back for part 2 of crime analysis for South Africa over the years. The following graph or visualization is where we had left off in our last video. In today's video, I had something in mind where I wanted to plot the same graph but for the individual provinces in South Africa to see which province contributes the most to each individual crime category or crime statistic. But I soon realized that it's quite difficult to differentiate data unless outliers exist. If we look at count of crimes of various nature in Eastern Cape over the years, in the visualization on the screen, I'm actually jumping a step. Let me show you the code. So I grabbed all the individual categories using a dictionary. Because we only have 7 categories, I chose to hard code it, where the key is the category and the value is the associated line style. So in this case, it'll be a solid line where each data point will be indicated by a circle and it will be a blue line. I then passed it a figure size and I rotated the X labels by 90 degrees. Following which, I simply did a for loop to loop over the data, and I then plotted the data. Passed in an X label for my graph, a Y label, and a title. I also passed in a legend to make differentiating the data a little easier, which will appear in the upper left of the visualization. As for the border axis pad, irrelevant. I then obviously show the graph or the visualization, and this is what we get. Let me zoom out a little. So for a while, let's disregard this clear outlier and we consider all the data to the left of it. It's not the easiest to see what's going on. We can say that yes, all of our data initially start at some point, let's say point A, and they all seem to take a decrease over time, which is great. We then notice for the financial year 2019-2020, all of our crime categories decrease. We had covered in the previous video that this was due not because of police intervention, but rather government intervention who had imposed COVID-19 lockdowns, which would obviously cause a decrease in every crime category. This would be true for every country that had imposed some kind of lockdown restriction. We also notice this huge spike in whatever the cyan line is. And if you look at our legend, we notice that the cyan line with the star data points is crimes detected as a result of police action. So actually, this huge outlier is great. It shows an active police force, an active, capable police force. And if we repeat, I also did some analysis over here. Let's go through it. I broke the analysis into 3 sections: pre-COVID, intra-COVID, and post-COVID. So intra-COVID, my mistake, pre-COVID would be all the years prior to 2019-2020. Intra-COVID would be all the years 2019-2020 between 2020-2021. And post-COVID would be all the data past that point, so past this financial year. We notice that every crime category, except aggravated robberies and sexual offences, were on a downtrend. So aggravated robberies, indicated by a black solid line, it's a little difficult to see, as I said, seems to be starting at some point right here, seeing a decrease, but then seeing an increase. That increase seems to remain static, and then increase, and then static, and then drops due to COVID. So not good. Let's look at sexual offenses, which is a not solid line. It seems to be a broken line with a square red dot. It starts here at some value, sees a slight increase, and seems to maintain that value. It then sees a decrease, followed by an increase, followed by an increase, followed by an increase, and then a slight decrease during COVID, which could be due to many factors as to why all other crime categories fell. Could be police intervention, stronger laws, etc. Not always the best thing. Maybe crimes just aren't being reported. Maybe crimes are just harder to report. We notice crimes detected due to police intervention peaked in the financial year 2017-2018, which is here. Here, 2017-2018, it had peaked pre-COVID, so not this. Pre-COVID, this is the highest. If things are as I stated earlier, these events might overlap, and an increase in crimes detected as a result of police action is a good thing. It shows active policing. Contact crimes still seem to be the dominant crime. Again, this could be due to overlap. So if you didn't watch the last video, simply put, I am unsure if these crime categories are mutually exclusive. If I rob you, but there's no contact involved, is it just aggravated robbery? But if I rob you and I also assault you, is it just aggravated robbery, or will it now also count as a contact crime? I would assume it would count as both, which may be the reason as to why contact crimes seems to be the most dominant line in all the graphs we have seen thus far, and all the line graphs we will see as we scroll down. And then during COVID, which is intra-COVID. As expected, people being confined, restricted movement, led to a decrease in all crime during COVID, as there were less opportunities for crime. This is nothing to be excited about. This would have happened everywhere where a COVID-19 restriction or lockdown was imposed. Unfortunately, my allergies are being unkind to me. We now have post-COVID, excluding property-related crimes and aggravated robbery. Every crime category saw an increase. So property-related crimes would be the solid line that's green with circled data points. So here's COVID, it drops, and post-COVID, it still drops. In the current year, it does seem to see a slight increase. And if we look at aggravated robbery, which is the black solid line with a circle, intra-COVID, it drops. Post-COVID, it sees a large decline. And the current year, it does seem to be steadying off with a slight increase, but still at a value lower than its previous lowest, which would have been for the financial year 2012-2013, disregarding the actions due to COVID, which is great. Crimes detected as a result of police action practically experienced a 10 times increase. This, look at it, clearly the outlier that would have caught your eye, this right here. What could cause this? Police action, government intervention, riots causing police action, or it could be a data error. Difficult to tell. It is an indication of active policing, so if it is active policing, hopefully these led to collective actions. Not important. We can then repeat the same type of graph, but this time for Free State. And we can repeat the same type of graph, but this time for Gauteng. And we can repeat this for each individual province in South Africa. And it will be good, but it's quite difficult for us to differentiate the data. It's just how line plots are. Again, now we can do the same thing for Limpopo, and then Mpumalanga. I believe NW is Northwest. NC is Northern Cape, which just seems to have the lowest amount of crimes in general, just above 17,500 pre-COVID, and peaking at a value of above 17,500 post-COVID. We can then do it for Western Cape, which seems to very weird, but okay. But again, it's quite difficult for us to read this data. We can do it, but it would take quite a bit of time. So instead what we do is, we repeat what we did, but we'll focus on one crime category. In this case, I chose sexual offenses. Sexual offenses such as molestation, rape, things of that nature. There is a separate sheet outlining each individual category within sexual offenses. But right now, we do not need that. We'll consider the aggregate sexual offenses. There is a plot or visualization that's easier to read. It's a bar plot. So I'll create my title, I'll create my X label, I'll create my Y label. Let me zoom in. I will then do plt.bar. I will pass in the raw data frame. I will filter it to the financial year only 2011-2012, and the crime category must only be sexual offenses. I will then grab the individual geographies associated with that. I will then create a variable called, I will then assign the parameter height to be the raw data frame, where the financial year is 2011-2012, and the crime category is sexual offenses. And this time I will grab the count column to grab all associated counts and match them with their associated geographies. I will then give it a color of M, which is magenta. I will then finally show the graph. And this is what we end up with. Sexual offenses in the 9 provinces in South Africa and South Africa itself for the financial year 2011-2012. We see our y-axis is crime count and our x-axis is the geographic location. Obviously, the ZA column will be the highest because it is the aggregate of all the others. We're going to take in some time and let's go. We notice that Gauteng seems to be the highest, or should I say the least safe in terms of sexual offenses, followed by KZN being second, where Western Cape appears to be the third, followed by Eastern Cape, and then Limpopo, Northwest seem to be following that, then Free State and Mpumalanga, and the safest seems to be Northern Cape. But this is just for 1 year. For us to write all of this code just to get 1 year, and we have to repeat it for all unique financial years. No, we can do a little shortcut. We'll create a variable called years. We will grab all financial years and then run the .unique method. We will then loop over the years. We will create a variable called filter data. We will consider the entire raw data frame. We will then filter it to where the financial year is equal to a year, and the crime category, in our case, which one we are considering is sexual offenses. We will then create a bar, filter their data.geography, and filter data.count. We will pass in some color for our plots, in this case black. And then title, X label, and Y label, self-explanatory. And finally, we will display our plots. And here we go. This is the same as the plot we just saw, but now instead of it being magenta, it's black. So we can look at it one more time. Consider all the data points. ZA, EC, FS, GT, KZN, LIM, MP, NW, NC, WC. We will then move to the next financial year, 2012-2013. The first thing we notice is the ZA column seems to be almost the same or a slight increase. But what's more important is Gauteng and KZN still seem to retain their title as being the least safest provinces in terms of sexual offense crimes, leading by Gauteng, followed second by KZN, and Eastern Cape and Western Cape seem to be in third position for least safe. We will now move on to the financial year 2013-2014. The first thing that should catch your eye is the fact that the entirety of the ZA column has decreased to where it was a value in the previous year above 60,000. It now is at a value below 60,000, which is great. And yet, Gauteng, KZN, and Eastern Cape seem to retain their titles as first, second, and third least safe provinces in terms of sexual offense crimes. We'll move on to the financial year 2014-2015. ZA saw an even lower rate of sexual offense crimes. Very good, very interesting. Police intervention, police actions, government actions, great. It could also be due to the fact that civilians are now choosing to take law into their own hands and somehow protecting themselves. And yet we see Gauteng, KZN, and Eastern Cape retaining their positions, and Northern Cape still seems to be the safest province to live in terms of sexual offense crimes. We now look at the financial year 2015-2016, and ZA has experienced a drop yet again in the entirety of sexual offense crimes. Great. And there is no need for me to repeat myself, but as you see, these 1, 2, 3 remain the same. And here's something great. 2016-2017. From a high of just above 60,000, it is now at a point just below 50,000 for the aggregate of all 9 provinces relating to sexual offense crimes. Great. Gauteng, KZN, and Eastern Cape still remain to be the 3 least safe provinces in terms of sexual offense crimes. We now have 2017-2018. The value has now seems to have increased slightly from the previous year, but nothing too drastic. 2018-2019, the victory was short-lived. It is now seen an increase above 50,000. Not good. And now we have 2019-2020. COVID is about to start in the next financial year. Or should I say COVID lockdown is about to start in the next financial year. Let us consider 2019-2020 the year pre-COVID. We see at a value just above 50,000. Gauteng seems to have seen an increase, same with KZN and Eastern Cape. Northern Cape still the safest in terms of sexual offense crimes. And here's 2020-2021. COVID lockdowns seem to have brought the value from just above 50,000 to now somewhere around 47,000, it would appear. All provinces seem to have seen a decrease in sexual offense crimes. Gauteng, not as much. KZN, not as much. Eastern Cape, not as much. Western Cape, not as much. We do see that the bar plots makes it much easier for us to differentiate the different data. This is post-COVID. We obviously expect to see a rise, and we do see one for the entirety of South Africa. The current year, 2022-2023. So let's do some analysis. Again, it'll be a brief overview. I will not cover every financial year. I will use the previous format of pre-COVID, intra-COVID, and post-COVID. Pre-COVID, Northern Cape remained the safest province in terms of sexual offense crimes, clearly indicated by it having the smallest bar in the plot over the years. We now have Gauteng, which remained the least safe province in terms of sexual offense crimes. There, let me just make sure. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. For all 12 years regarding our data, Gauteng has remained the least safe province in terms of sexual offense crimes. Not a good title to hold. Clearly indicated by it having the largest bar in the plot over the years. KZN and Eastern Cape retained their status as the second and third least safe province in terms of sexual offense crimes. The two did swap their respective positions for a few years, but also retained their high crime count. There is a rainbow after the storm. We notice that ZA peaked at slightly above 60,000 sexual offense crimes. This value did drop due to a variety of reasons to a value just below 50,000. We did see a slight increase, but clearly we see, and this is very, very important, Intervention. Clearly we see intervention is possible, and this is very important. Alright, let's move to intra-COVID. As expected, we saw a large decrease in crime, but not as large as we would expect, which is what we would say at face value. But 5,000 may not seem as a large decrease, but it actually reflects a 48,000 divided by 53 times 100. It reflects a 9.43% decrease in sexual offense crimes. Almost 10% increase is actually a lot. Yet we have some unanswered important questions. Why wasn't there obviously a larger decrease? That's always the question, right? Why isn't there an even larger decrease in crime? Next, with sexual offenses, repeat offenses, very important. Also very important is their due process. We now have post-COVID. As expected, we saw an increase. This behavior is not unique to South Africa. Every country that has had a lockdown period would have seen a decrease during COVID and an increase after. Police intervention, political issues are a few elements that would have had an influence on how large an increase would be. Merit, where merit is due, the increase was still below the largest seen in the data. Very important. As for individual provinces, same as pre-COVID. In the next video, we will repeat the same thing, but this time we'll look at police intervention. And this is where we stop.